I feel like a lot of young professionals who come into the industry see security as just like this cool guy sitting in his room and hacking through the day. They see that as cybersecurity. And it's so sad to see their bubble burst once they come into corporate cybersecurity. The attackers are looking for gaps in your application of a security program, and that's what they can go ahead and exploit. And if you notice, a lot of these attacks that are happening are being carried out by script kiddies, which tells a lot about the security posture of these companies that are being attacked. We have had a lot of these cases where they do this, send across phishing links and impersonating websites that steal your credentials. So end of the day, that all boils down to the basics again. You could say this is coming full circle, but yeah, end of the day, that's all that matters. And a lot of these happen on the browser is what I would say as well.
Today, we're talking with Yaamini Mohan, who is recently a security engineer at Dell. Yaamini has earned recognition as a RSA security scholar and a Black Hat student advisor. She's also a board member of Women in Cybersecurity Austin, mentoring the next generation of security professionals. Yaamini, thanks for being with us on the Be Fearless podcast.
Thank you, John. Thank you. It's an honor being here. Like I had mentioned when we were talking earlier also, it's an honor to be invited, and I'm looking forward to the episode. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited for it as well. So let's talk about your career journey and foundation a little bit. Mm-hmm. You worked at Infosys for slightly 2 years. I've worked with Infosys in the past as well in different positions. Not myself working, but working with Infosys.
Oh, got it.
What was it like transitioning from that foundational security operations role to a more specialized vulnerability response role?
Transitioning to a more specialized role was very much intentional. I wanted to be skilled in a particular field and in a particular vector. So with Infosys, I was barely scratching the surface of cybersecurity, and I wanted to get into this. I wanted to get into this field, and I was very much interested. I used to have my own home labs, and I used to do, I think, the A+ course, CompTIA A+ course and Security Plus course were the certifications that I did. So I was very much interested and I wanted to get into this. So I was looking up ways of how I can transition into the field. And that's when I found out that doing a master's in the area would help with that transition. So I applied to various universities and I got into Johns Hopkins. And I had a 2-year course there. And that's when I realized that cybersecurity isn't enough and that you have a billion things happening inside cybersecurity that you can still specialize in. And I was in this journey of figuring out where my interest lies. And I had various roles over the years: cloud security, ethical hacking, vulnerability response, compliance, so many things that I wanted to, and that was very much intentional. I wanted to try out all these different fields from a practical standpoint to see how it is being utilized in the industry so I can understand where my interest lies. And yeah, I would say it was a confusing journey at times. But then I see that now when I'm mentoring other people, at the time I was very confused and I thought, why is it that I can't figure this out? But now when I mentor other people, I see them going through the same journey. So now I understand that it's very much required. Yeah, it's an ongoing journey, and I continue to learn and improve my knowledge in the field every single day.
Yeah, I think it's, just thinking about my organizations in the past, there are definitely two things, a couple of things. We'll talk a little bit about, CISO organizations, right, and how they're built. Mm-hmm. But more specifically on the people side is that there's a lot of things to do in security. When we say security, I think a lot of folks probably think about vulnerability management because a lot of engineers, that's one of their touch points with security is vulnerability management. Mm-hmm. And then most people aren't dealing with like security ops. Mm-hmm. They might deal with the GRC teams because they might request an application or something else and they have to go through a process, or there might be other kinds of things that's going on. But I think that definitely there's different cycles, meaning that like for me, for example, GRC is somewhat on a slow cycle, meaning the policies and procedures that you do to manage your security organization from a policy perspective, that doesn't change too fast. Right. But it's very consistent on, you maybe do a PCI every year. You might do a SOC 2 every half a year. You might do your ISMS, ISO 27000 once a year. And you have these cycles. And there's a lot of work maintaining security certifications and such for business over a year, right? There's a lot of work there.
Exactly.
But as opposed to operations, which is more fast cycle kind of stuff, it's like, 15-minute, 1 hour kind of problems that are happening constantly all day long. And then, vulnerability management is more like a monthly cycle. So they have different cycles, and then there's different levels of technical expertise that are required for those roles.
True.
And so, like security engineering, again, has a longer cycle because they're developing. So there's all these like little weird kind of cycles, but there's also like this technical, depth that needs to happen in different places. And it's a broad spectrum of work. There's project management work that needs to happen. There's lots of things that need to happen inside a security organization. So I'm not surprised that when people say, I'm going to do security, or I want to do security, or whatever, that people are spending time trying to find what it is that is interesting and exciting for them.
Way they want to fit in. They're still trying to figure that out. And since you spoke about engineers, people who move from an IT background into security have a different sort of expectation as to what they're getting into compared to developers who move from their role to security. So it depends on how they see security as well. I feel like a lot of young professionals who come into the industry see security as just like this cool guy sitting in his room and hacking through the day. They see that as cybersecurity. And it's so sad to see their bubble burst once they come into corporate cybersecurity. But yeah, agreed. It requires different levels of technical acumen, I believe, and a lot of learning over the years.
Yeah, you said that, and all I could think of was Mr. Robot. Like, that's what he's going to be. And, it really isn't. Not in the enterprise space anyway, not inside corporate America, corporate IT, right? Or outside of America. It's a very, very different kind of reality. I mean, it's interesting. I find it incredibly interesting. I think the other hard part about security and people figuring out the journey, you got to really kind of commit to continuous learning.
Exactly, yeah.
Because the scope and typically the security team is a small team, like comparative to IT and comparative to product engineering. We're a very small component of the entire organization.
Agreed.
And those people that are in the rest of the organization have way more ideas than we have people. And there's new products that are coming, into the market every single day. That new SaaS products, which cloud made so much faster to use.
Oh yeah. So
and then there's new people come up with new frameworks and new technologies to kind of execute on their programs that they're trying to build, and new features for their products. To be in security is definitely you need to stay on top of it.
Exactly.
So if you're not really interested in technology and you're not really interested in continuous learning, I think it's a difficult space to kind of excel at.
Agreed. And to add to a lot of new SaaS products that come out every day and new frameworks coming out, specific to the security field would be new attacks every few days. And I think you would have seen that pattern, especially in the last couple of years. Every few weeks, we have new kinds of sophisticated attacks, and I think these are like reviewed attacks of already existing ones. Like nobody does like normal phishing attacks anymore. It's all complex, encrypted, complicated attacks of what was already existing, and you need to keep learning about how these guys are doing this to be able to stop or defend these. I think it's not just about learning the new technologies and inventions done by other individuals or companies, but it's also being updated about the dark side of things. Like, what are the kind of attacks that are happening, and how do these products help with these attacks? Which products right now are updated on getting ahead of the latest attacks? Because you need those products and those techniques
Yeah.
to be able to defend these. So
Yeah.
it's like back and forth, I would say.
Absolutely. More code, more problems, right? So,
Yes.
and I think that's my point on the technology landscape changing is exactly what you said, which is that it's not just that the landscape's changing technology. You really need to understand the attack surface of this new technology, right?
Exactly.
What are potential attacks? And then attackers are going to try to take advantage of the gaps there, right? And a guy I used to work with, he used to talk about attack progression and attack evolution, right? And attacks evolve over time, meaning that the attacker doesn't know what they need to do to get into your environment, exploit whatever it is. So they test and they test and then test until they can progress their attack, and then hopefully they want to progress their attack so that they can hit whatever objective they're going to have. But every new technology, every new framework, different implementations of those frameworks give rise to potential footholds, right? And it's keeping up with all of that I think is, one of the bigger challenges inside cybersecurity. But again, if it's a vocation versus an occupation, if you have a vocation, meaning that you have some passion with technology, passion with security, passion and understanding, then learning more about the technology, learning more about the attack surface, learning about how hackers think and how they operate, it's actually a very interesting career.
It is very much, yeah.
As opposed to if it's just an occupation, you just like sitting in there thinking that I want to work 9 to 5 and keep up. That would be a hard job to have if you don't actually have some passion.
I agree. I'm glad that you brought that term 9 to 5, because I don't think security is a 9 to 5 job. Like, I know that the structure is as such, but I don't see it being a 9 to 5 job, especially when you are in the defense side. I don't see it as a 9 to 5 job, because I mean, you're always, you need to be available all the time to be able to defend, whether it's a product. I mean, obviously, depending on the capacity that you're working in. If you're like a security developer, you're not going to be working, you don't have to be available around the clock. There's no defense that you have to do. But if you're like a responder, if you're like an incident responder, vulnerability responder, whatever it is, then you need to be available beyond that scope as well. So yeah, I don't think that 9 to 5 idea is something you can sell in cybersecurity. Also, I don't think you can kind of cage yourself to one section. Like, you can't be a master of cloud security without knowing about at least the foundations of the networks and the architecture. Like, you need to have at least a little bit knowledge. The more knowledge, the better. But you can't just confine yourself to like one thing. Like, oh, this is it. Like, I'm a cloud security engineer. All I'm going to do is sit with S3 buckets all day. You just can't do that, So you need a little bit of passion to be a little more curious to understand if this attack happened, where is this starting from? What is the history? What are the tools they're using? What did they think of? All that plays a major role, I think.
Agreed. I mean, focusing on one technology, that happens in IT. On the IT side, there are people that are just cloud engineers and they just be able to deploy technology on cloud. And, or, Windows, like back in, when I started, we had Windows engineers and Unix engineers or Linux engineers, right? And then we had networking engineers, and these guys just focus on networking. I think from the cybersecurity perspective, you kind of have to know how it all works. Exactly. Otherwise, you don't get to understand the potential of attacks and how things are going to be exploited. I mean, I like I said, I think it's a lot of fun being on the defender side and figuring out like defense strategies and figuring out how all this technology works together and how the technology works and how it's implemented, and then how your defense strategy comes into it. There's lots of meaningful, learning opportunities inside cyber. But I think it does play into it if you have some passion about it. I think it's going to help you in your career choices, right? Recently, you were a security engineer at Dell. And you're working on the VxRail project, right? Or product, right? You've done a lot of the defense against new threats. Can you share some insights into what you've gained in working on ways to mitigate some security weaknesses?
Yes, this is something that I keep preaching every opportunity I get. Like we spoke, like these attacks keep evolving and there's so many new fancy technologies, fancy attacks. But I think the answer lies in your basics. Your foundation needs to be strong, and which goes back to just your basics. Have your password set right, your MFA, all those boring stuff that people brush past is what is going to protect you. And whatever new idea or new technology, new defense concept that you come up with goes on top of this foundation layer, but your basics need to be right. And I feel like, having worked with a lot of other companies right now, I see that the companies that get that right, or the teams that get their basic security right, are safer, if I can put it that way. And the ones who focus more on having fancier strategies and not focus on the basics are definitely at risk. So I would say follow the basics, follow the foundations, and that will keep you safer than you expect.
Get the basics done right. I agree. I think largely security is somewhat, if it's exciting, then you're probably doing something wrong. You know,
I know, right?
if you're feeling threatened, or threats are actually happening, and you're having to respond to threats in real time, and it's not that we don't have threats every day all the time. Mm-hmm. I was actually just looking at like the CERT India. They have mm-hmm. this direction, from what's Ministry of Electronics and Technology, I think is what it is. And it's like 70B, right? And they're saying you need to report security incidents or events within 6 hours. And mm-hmm. I was looking at it from a contractual perspective, like, what does that mean for me as a vendor? What does that mean for me to do that? The number of security events that occur on a network every single day. I mean, if you just plug your computer into the internet, you'd be immediately attacked, or very quickly you'd be attacked on your systems. If you were threatened by that every single time, then mm-hmm. it would be very tiring very quickly. You'd want to give up. But I do find that, one, security should be boring, right? It's like, hey, let's make sure that our processes are there. Let's deploy our laptops with the endpoint technology that we're chosen to use in our business every day. Let's make sure that the laptops are going to be deployed correctly with the right technologies on it every single time. That's really boring, right? Keeping the software up to date, boring.
Mm-hmm. I know, right?
Matching, boring. But if you do those, you're raising the bar that mm-hmm. it takes for an attacker to get through your defenses by a lot. I remember thinking this, and I don't know if I heard it from someone, but I know I've repeated it, is that if we just become compliant to what it is that we say we're going to do, and we consistently, execute on our program, mm-hmm. then we will easily defend against 80, 90% of the attackers that are out there, right? Because mm-hmm. on the attacker side, they have different skill levels as well, right? And they're looking for us to be inconsistent in our application of our security program. That's what they're looking for, right? Is those gaps in our defenses that they're taking advantage of. And if script kiddies can get on your network, because
then you're doing something wrong.
Not a good situation to be in. If nation states have a lot more resources to apply to the problem, and maybe you won't be able to defend yourself against nation states, especially if you're operating inside the borders of that nation state. It's super hard, almost impossible for you not to be exploited if they really want to be on your network. So it's risk reward, mm-hmm. but like you said, it's like if you just run your program and you can be consistent in the application of it, mm-hmm. then you're going to be in pretty good defensible.
True. I think you put that right, that the attackers are looking for gaps in your application of a security program, and that's what they can go ahead and exploit. And if you notice, a lot of these attacks that are happening are being carried out by script kiddies, which tells a lot about the security posture of these companies that are being attacked. It's not even somebody who has like a lot of resources. So there's a gap in the way you're doing defense. Yes, I think think focusing on the boring stuff is gonna help you in the longer run, rather than making sure that you invest in fancier security. Don't get me wrong, I do think that people need to invest more in security tools and security posture for the company, because I know that's something that's lacking in the board these days. But along with that, I think you need to prioritize getting your basics right first, and then go ahead and experiment with all these fancy security products.
I definitely have another story on this one, right? And so I remember one time when I was working for a MSSP, myself and the head of our threat intelligence team went out to visit a customer in Atlanta. And I had two meetings that with customers that day. And one of the meetings was they just kept talking to me about 0 days and wanted to know how we defend and detect 0 days and how our program worked and everything else, which is fine, right? Happy to explain it and talk about it. But the bigger problem that organization had, and this is like a Fortune 500 company, right? Was that the security team couldn't even deploy the controls that they had purchased, right? They couldn't even deploy them. They couldn't get the business to deploy the agent onto their systems. So it didn't matter what it is our advanced capabilities were for detecting 0 days. They couldn't even implement a security program. They didn't know what they needed to patch or anything. They had no security operations. They did, but it was all endpoint based. It wasn't on their servers, right? And that's where they were having problems, right? And so it doesn't really matter how you do something if you can't do the basics. The second person I talked to that same day, because I'd been with these folks for 7 or 8 hours, and then I went to dinner with this other customer. and I was talking to him about the day and about 0 days and everything else. And he's like, John, if I can't get vulnerability management right, I'm not worried about 0 days. I've got to get the basics done right.
Exactly.
And that's going to help. Don't worry about the maturity of your organization. Your maturity of your security program kind of dictates how fancy you should be, right? You might want to buy fancy technologies to do behavioral detections, like machine learning and that kind of stuff. But if your team can't use NTP and you can't get your logs set correctly, it doesn't matter how fancy that technology is. You just won't be able to take advantage of it. And I've seen that happen as well, right? Where people wanted to do fancy machine learning, but their data was crap. And, so I think, again, fancy technologies, fancy stuff, they get a lot of headlines. People want to talk about them, but the basics are key, I think, foundationally, right? So anyway, I'm agreeing with you for sure. Something else that you're working on is the Women in Cybersecurity for Austin. You're juggling a lot right now. Vice President of Women in Cybersecurity, Board of Technology Council member, and now you're working full-time on your own business, right? How do you manage all that responsibility without burning out?
Well, I don't know if that's entirely true. I do think there's a lot of burnout that comes with having multiple roles, and I think you would know that as well. But I think I focus a lot on prioritizing what needs to be done immediately, and I have 3 major tasks that I need to get done every single day. And that's all I focus on. And until that's done, I don't get to anything else. So a few tricks and tactics from here and there. And I've been blessed to have extremely skilled people around me who teach me how to be better every single day. So that helps a lot as well, to have the right team and to have the right attitude in the team, with no sort of silly blame games or finger pointings, anything of that sort. It's just people who are here to learn and to have a good experience. So that helps a lot. That helps a lot. Even when there are issues, or even when there are deadlines that are missed or mess ups, there are people who are still there to support the entire team. So which I highly appreciate. Those are just some tricks off the top of my head.
So good team, capable team, good culture.
Good culture, right? Yes. Yes.
Right. No blaming. Right. And then third, I think this is your top one, is prioritization, making sure that you know what you're focused on. And that kind of helps you keep moving, making progress. Right. you're going to have mistakes. I mean, I think if you're not making a mistake, then you're probably not trying hard enough.
Exactly.
So when I was learning how to ski, he told me,
Mhm.
John, if you don't fall down at least 10 times on the way down the slopes, then you're just not trying hard enough. And I think that applies to security as well. You know, you're going
Yeah.
to make mistakes, and that's okay.
Mhm.
Mistakes are learning opportunities. It's really how you handle a mistake, right?
Exactly.
And, you know, there's two ways of handling a mistake. Well, maybe three ways, right? It's like risk mitigation. You can pretend like it didn't happen,
That's
right?
the worst. Yeah.
That's the worst, right? And then or you get defensive about it, right?
Mhm.
Or you can learn from it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that the best thing to do is actually learn from it. I think that when you hide your mistakes or you get defensive about it, these are not, you know, positive qualities, except especially in cybersecurity.
Exactly.
It's like, it's okay to make a mistake. What you do about it is what's important. Don't be defensive about it. It's
Mhm.
a team, right? I like to play soccer and watch soccer,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
they make mistakes all the time. The team, you know, when they're passing the ball and everything else, these are people playing at their highest levels, and they
Mhm.
still make
Mhm.
bad passes. They still don't hit every goal that they try to make, and they just keep playing, right? They
Mhm.
just keep learning. They keep practicing. They keep, you know, honing their craft so that there's fewer mistakes, but there's
Mhm.
always mistakes. So I think the best thing to do is learn from it, practice with it, make sure that you have that kind of culture. And then prioritization is also, I think, key, right? Meaning
Yeah.
that, you know, as long as the team's working, and, you know, the bigger the team, the more number of actions you could probably take. But for
Mhm.
yourself, you got to be, you know, as even as a CISO, knowing what your top three priorities are.
Yeah.
They may
Yeah.
not be things that you can do in a day, but knowing what those three things are and keep, you know, making progress on those or moving to make progress on those objectives every day is, I think, key to progress, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. And I think when you have your task prioritized, you can plan your day better. And that expands into planning your week better, your month better. So you have, you know what you're working on, you know what your target is, and you are not pulled into requests, like on demand requests. Like a lot of things are going to pop up, and you are going to want to do multiple things. But if you have this mindset that you need to get your prioritized task done first, then you can get to the other stuff, but you're going to still finish your target. So, yeah.
for sure. And then I think if people know what your priorities are and what you're worried about or what your priorities are,
Mm-hmm.
it's less confusing for everyone else as well.
Exactly, exactly. It helps them when they come up with a request also. It helps them to think about it in a better way. They know if this is my priority or not once I've communicated it to them. They don't waste their time either.
Absolutely. We've talked a little bit about technology changing over time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that there's new frameworks, new technology, new SaaS apps, and everything that kind of moves us forward.
Mm-hmm.
We got to be thinking about the attack surface, you know, about, well, how is it that our products are delivered, and then how are they attacked?
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about how we kind of move forward in, you know, moving our security programs and like getting the basics done right. Now,
Mm-hmm.
a couple of different things, right? And one of the challenges in the industry today, and this is my perspective, one of my theses coming into SquareX is that
Mm-hmm.
the actual development and deployment of technology today is completely different than it was 15 years ago, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is that we used to be very much data centers, our own data centers, and we have our office spaces where our people came to work, and we pretty much knew what our attack surface was. We could put defenses around it. You could keep it in your head, and you could design something around it. You know, because of cloud, because of SaaS, and because of the complexity of the browser, how we deploy technology is more likely to be a SaaS offering today than it was 10 years ago. So if I'm going to deploy an accounting system or ERP system, I'm more likely going to deploy it on the cloud today than it is that I'm going to deploy it in my own data center.
Mm-hmm. True.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as a result of that, we're spending way more time in the browser, right? You
Mm-hmm.
know, the amount of time that we're in the browser is a lot greater. If you can imagine the attack surface, and you have hundreds of apps that your enterprise is dealing with, and they're all deployed on the SaaS, and there could be an AWS, Azure, GCP, in any kind of region that there is around the world. If you can imagine that, you kind of have this explosion of an attack surface and where your data is and all those kinds of things, right? Do you feel like that's changed the kind of vulnerabilities that we're dealing with?
I think it would be I'll have to go back to what I spoke about. I would say yes and no, because the vulnerabilities and the threats that we're getting, they seem more complex and they seem more sophisticated. But if you take a look at it, it's the ones that were already existing that have evolved over the years is what I would say. And if you narrow down each of these attacks or each of these threats, you can see that it takes us back to our basics, like we just discussed. If you have your basics right, none of these would even evolve, is what I feel. None of these would go beyond what their initial capacity is. I feel like with the increased attack surface, coupled with your basics not being set right, your basics not being done right, is what is giving birth to all these complicated threats and complicated vulnerabilities, new vulnerabilities. So I would say yes and no, but it very much depends on how you wanna structure your security posture. We've always had phishing attacks, but it's being complicated. It's becoming more of sophisticated attacks now because of one reason could be lack of awareness. The employers still behave the way that they used to earlier. They click on links, they open these emails, they do not report these, and that is giving them that increases the attack vector, and that gives these attackers the space to or the opportunity to make this a more complicated attack. So yes, I would say yes and no, because it's coupled with getting your basics right again.
Yeah, I mean, definitely there's a lot about the basics being right. For example, you want to have MFA and SSO for your logins, and you want to make sure that you know where your people are supposed to be going, right? Having that list. I think what makes it more complicated is that it's hard to know whether when you're going to a new AWS website, whether it's actually a legitimate party or a hacker, because hackers can get free credits on AWS just as easily as a legitimate user. But you're probably not going to be blocking AWS address space when you're doing it, right? So I think that the paradigm has shifted a little bit, meaning that the attacks that are occurring are happening more in the browser, meaning identity attacks, theft of identity. People are able to just sign in with Google or sign in with Microsoft and add a new product to their portfolio of apps that they're using without going through a governance process. Right? And so at scale of thousands of employees in your organization, that you have a lot of folks that are going to different websites and they're clicking on OAuth consents and those kinds of things in the browser. I think that it just creates this really difficult attack surface to kind of defend against if you're not doing something in the browser. I think, and this is again going back to my observations, is that typically we, and me being guilty of this in the past as well, is I thought that my EDR tools and my CASB and my SWG tools, my secure web gateways, and my SASE tools were going to protect me from attackers, which they do. I mean, absolutely. If an attacker can if I can go through the browser and download something and run malicious code easily on my box, then the EDR tool is going to help. I think the problem is there's so much work that happens just in the browser, and a lot of companies aren't defending in the browser. That's where you have like extensions, OAuth consents, impersonating websites that are stealing credentials, or there may be even using Microsoft or DocuSign or some other toolkit, or not toolkit, but actual apps that you may be using to send you phishing leaks through a DocuSign document, for example. There's so many ways that attackers could be taking advantage of you. That's what I'm seeing. So it's not more than just governance, right? It's more than just, hey, this is what we mean to do. There is definitely an awareness part. It's like, making sure people know the right things to do, right? But I think that having technology to help defend, right? We wouldn't get rid of our EDRs. We wouldn't get rid of our SASE and SWGs. We're not going to get rid of our firewalls. But I think adding more capabilities in the browser would be good for people.
For sure. For sure. I'm surprised because we never spoke about this, and I'm surprised that you brought this up. This is what I've been seeing in the recent time, and this is what we do in my stealth startup also, which is M365 security. And we have had a lot of these cases where they do this, send across phishing links and impersonating websites that steal your credentials. So end of the day, that all boils down to the basics again. You could say this is coming full circle, but yeah, end of the day, that's all that matters. And a lot of these happen on the browser is what I would say as well. I do agree with that point.
Yeah, I think they're just traversing the browser, right? And it's just, we're like spending 80 or 90% of our time in the browser. It's just ridiculous that no one's, it's not that we don't have technology. SquareX is a provider of security in the browser, but there's other ones as well. But no one's thinking about it. It's just weird. Like the industry's kind of shifted away. And I think, again, does EDR help? Does SSD? Yeah, they do, but I think more time in the browser would be good.
True.
So you're also big on mentoring through the Women in Cybersecurity Austin and the Ask Me Network. Can you tell us about someone you mentored who really showed you why this work matters?
Oh yeah, I think I have a lot of such stories. The best part about this is that I have kept in touch with a lot of these people that I've mentored over the years, and for me to be able to see them implementing ideas that we have brainstormed together, and to see that work out, and to see them benefit from that is extremely rewarding. It's great to see that outcome. I've been lucky to be able to stay in touch with a lot of them over the years, and they reach out every time they have an update or they've achieved something or there's a progress. They love sharing it, and I love listening to it. So, and I keep learning from them. Like I think I brought up a few of those instances during the episode as well. There's so many things that I get to learn from them over the years. So yes, I think what is the best part about doing this is that I get to learn a lot from them. I get mentored in return. So yes, that is
Absolutely.
the best part.
And so with respect to women in cybersecurity, is there a big myth that you think needs to be busted?
Yeah, I think that's what we are all working towards. That this is a male dominated industry is the myth. I think there are more, if not equal, number of women in the industry or trying to get into the industry, and gender does not play a role here at all. It depends on your skill, and that's all that people should focus on. If I am smart enough, then I get to do the job, and not based on my gender. So I would say when I got in, based on all the talks and all the interactions I had, I thought that was something that was there in the industry. But being in the industry, I think it's a very welcoming, well-knit community. And this myth that women are not supported enough in the industry is not true, is what I would say. I believe we have a lot of supporters, male supporters in the industry who are rooting for a lot of female colleagues. And that would be the myth that I burst when I talk to other women who are trying to get into the industry.
Excellent. And finally, you're always speaking at conferences and volunteering. What's the one thing you find yourself saying over and over to the cybersecurity community?
Well, I'm going to have to go back to the basics. It's going to be that again. Everything that we spoke about in the episode so far, get your basics right, and life will be much more boring, which is good being in security, like we discussed.
Agreed. Yaamini, thanks so much for being on the Be Fearless podcast. It was great hosting you here.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, John. Thank you for having me.